In the sprawling corridors of New Geneva Military Academy, where Earth's brightest young minds train to defend humanity against an ever-hostile universe, there exists an unspoken hierarchy. At the top stand the confident, the loud, the naturally gifted. At the bottom, barely noticed by instructors and invisible to fellow cadets, sits a quiet girl with downcast eyes who seems more suited for a library than a battlefield. But in a galaxy where humanity fights for survival against 3 different alien species, where every human colony lives under the constant threat of annihilation, appearances can be the most dangerous deception of all. Sometimes the greatest weapons come in the most unexpected packages, and sometimes the fate of entire worlds rests in the hands of those who speak the softest. What happens when the shy girl everyone overlooked turns out to be humanity's most lethal guardian? What happens when the quiet one in the back of the class holds secrets that could reshape the very nature of human warfare? And, most importantly, what happens when Earth's enemies finally push too far, and the silent watcher decides it's time to stop hiding? The universe is about to learn that humans don't just survive through strength and technology. Sometimes, they survive through the one thing no alien species has ever truly understood: the power of those who choose to remain unseen until the moment they decide to be noticed. The morning alarm shrieked through the dormitories of New Geneva Military Academy at precisely 0600 hours, just as it had every day for the past 3 years. Cadet Sarah Chen rolled out of her narrow bunk with practiced silence, her movements so fluid and quiet that her roommate, Zara Okafor, remained fast asleep in the bunk above, while other cadets stumbled around their rooms, cursing the early hour and banging lockers. Sarah dressed in the pre-dawn darkness without making a sound. She was always first to the showers, always first to the mess hall, and always first to claim the corner table where she could sit with her back to the wall and watch the entrance. Not that anyone noticed. In 3 years at the academy, Sarah had perfected the art of being invisible. She kept her dark hair tied back in the regulation style, her uniform immaculate but unremarkable, and her voice so quiet that instructors often forgot she was in the room. The mess hall began to fill as other cadets arrived for breakfast. The popular crowd gathered around Marcus Reed, a tall blonde cadet whose father was Admiral Reed of the 3rd Fleet. Marcus held court every morning, regaling his audience with stories of weekend leave adventures and speculation about their upcoming assignments. His voice carried across the entire hall, confident and commanding. "I'm telling you, the Zephyrian assault on Kepler 442 was a complete disaster because command didn't listen to my father's tactical recommendations," Marcus proclaimed, cutting into his synthetic protein with theatrical precision. "If I'd been there, the whole engagement would have gone differently." His followers nodded eagerly. Jake Morrison, the Academy's star combat pilot, slapped Marcus on the back. "When we graduate next month, I bet you'll get assigned to the Titan Squadron. Your old man's pulling strings, right?" Marcus grinned. "Let's just say certain opportunities have been discussed." At her corner table, Sarah ate her breakfast methodically while observing the social dynamics of her classmates. She had learned their patterns, their relationships, their strengths and weaknesses through 3 years of careful observation. Marcus was physically imposing and politically connected, but his tactical analysis was often flawed. Jake was an exceptional pilot but impulsive under pressure. Zara was brilliant with defensive systems but struggled with close-quarters combat. Sarah knew all of this because she made it her business to know. What her classmates didn't realize was that while they saw her as the forgettable girl who never spoke up in class, she was actually recording every lecture, analyzing every training exercise, and studying every tactical manual in the Academy's extensive database. The reason was simple. Sarah Chen was not who she appeared to be. Her official records showed that she was the daughter of civilian engineers from the Mars colonies. Average test scores, minimal combat experience, admitted to the Academy through the general lottery system that gave colonial families a chance to serve in Earth's military. The perfect cover for someone who needed to remain unnoticed. The truth was considerably more complicated. Lieutenant Commander Chen Wei, Sarah's father, was not a civilian engineer. He was one of Earth's most decorated special operations officers, a man who had conducted covert missions behind enemy lines against all 3 of humanity's alien adversaries. Commander Diana Ross, her mother, was a xenopsychologist who specialized in understanding alien behavioral patterns for military intelligence. Together, They had created and trained the most dangerous weapon in human space. Their daughter, Sarah, had been learning combat techniques since she could walk. By age 8, she could field strip and reassemble 15 different types of weapons blindfolded. By 12, she spoke fluent Zephyrian, Korathian, and Nexarian, the languages of humanity's 3 primary enemies. By 16, she had accompanied her parents on classified reconnaissance missions, observing alien military installations from hiding spots that adult Special Forces operators couldn't access. The plan had always been for Sarah to attend the military academy, to learn how conventional forces operated, and to eventually take her place in the special operations community. But her parents had insisted she experience normal military life first, to understand the soldiers she would someday be called upon to protect and lead. So Sarah became the invisible student, the one everyone dismissed, while secretly being the most skilled cadet in the academy's history. Her first class of the day was Advanced Tactical Analysis with Colonel Harrison, a stern woman who had lost her left arm fighting Korathian raiders at the Battle of Proxima Station. The colonel preferred interactive discussions, calling on students to analyze historical battles and propose alternative strategies. The Zephyrian attack on the mining station at Wolf 359 last month, Colonel Harrison began, projecting a holographic display of the battle. Cadet Morrison, tell me what went wrong with our defensive strategy. Jake shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He had clearly not done the reading. Well, I think our ships were probably in the wrong position. Several cadets snickered. Colonel Harrison's expression remained neutral, but Sarah could see the disappointment in her eyes. Cadet Reed, perhaps you have a more comprehensive analysis. Marcus straightened confidently. The problem was obviously our failure to anticipate the Zephyrian flanking maneuver. If command had positioned the heavy cruisers in a defensive screen, they could have prevented the enemy from reaching the station. Colonel Harrison nodded slowly. And how would you have arranged that defensive screen, Cadet? Standard Formation 7, with the cruisers in a line abreast formation approximately 50,000 kilometers from the station. From her seat in the back row, Sarah winced internally. Formation 7 would have been a disaster against Zephyrian tactics. The aliens specialized in rapid hit-and-run attacks using their superior speed and maneuverability. A static defensive line would have been exactly what they wanted to see. Interesting approach, Colonel Harrison said diplomatically. Can anyone suggest potential problems with that strategy? The classroom was silent. Sarah could feel the colonel's eyes scanning the room, looking for someone, anyone, who understood why Marcus's suggestion was fundamentally flawed. Several students shifted nervously in their seats. Finally, Colonel Harrison's gaze settled on Sarah. Cadet Chen, you've been unusually quiet today. What do you think of Cadet Reed's tactical assessment? Sarah felt 30 pairs of eyes turn toward her. This was exactly the kind of attention she had spent 3 years avoiding. But she could not, in good conscience, let such a dangerous misunderstanding go uncorrected. Permission to speak freely, Colonel? Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Granted. Sarah stood slowly, her heart racing despite her training. Formation 7 assumes the enemy will engage in traditional ship-to-ship combat. But Zephyrian doctrine emphasizes speed and unpredictability. A static defensive screen would give them multiple approach vectors for hit-and-run attacks. They would use their superior acceleration to strike the flanks of our formation, then retreat before our heavy weapons could acquire target locks. The classroom had gone completely silent. Marcus was staring at her with undisguised surprise, as was everyone else. Continue, Colonel Harrison said, leaning forward with interest. The correct approach would have been a mobile defense using fast attack craft in random patrol patterns, supported by long-range sensor platforms to detect Zephyrian approach routes early. When the enemy committed to an attack vector, our forces could converge on that position from multiple directions, denying them the hit-and-run opportunity they were seeking. Sarah sat down quickly, hoping the discussion would move on to someone else. But she could feel Colonel Harrison's analytical gaze, studying her with new interest. That is, a remarkably sophisticated analysis, Cadet Chen. Have you studied Zephyrian tactical doctrine extensively? I find xenomilitary theory interesting, Colonel, Sarah said quietly. What she did not mention was that she had observed Zephyrian raiders in action during 3 separate covert missions with her parents. She had watched them destroy human patrol ships using exactly the tactics she had just described. After class, Sarah tried to make her usual quick exit, but Marcus Reed blocked her path in the corridor. "That was quite a performance in there, Chen," he said, his tone mixing curiosity with suspicion. "I didn't know you had such strong opinions about tactics." "I just read the assigned materials," Sarah replied, trying to step around him. "Really? Because that sounded like the kind of analysis you'd get from someone with actual combat experience." Marcus studied her face carefully. "Your parents really work on Mars? Doing civilian engineering?" Sarah's training kicked in. Her expression remained neutral, her body language unchanged. "My father designs atmospheric processors. My mother works on hydroponic systems." It was technically true. Those were the cover identities her parents used when they needed to blend in with civilian populations. "Interesting," Marcus said, clearly not convinced. "Well, maybe we should study together sometime. You obviously know more than you let on." "I prefer to study alone," Sarah said, finally managing to step around him. As she walked toward her next class, Sarah could feel Marcus watching her retreating form. This was exactly what she had hoped to avoid. Her parents had drilled into her the importance of maintaining her cover, of never standing out or drawing unwanted attention, but as she thought about the tactical discussion, Sarah realized that her real problem might not be maintaining her cover much longer. In just 1 month, all the cadets would graduate and receive their assignments. Most would be posted to regular fleet positions or garrison duties on human colonies. But the top performers, the ones who showed exceptional promise, would be invited to apply for advanced training programs. Sarah's grades were carefully average, but her knowledge was anything but. And if instructors like Colonel Harrison started paying attention to her real capabilities, questions would inevitably follow. Her next class was physical combat training with Sergeant Martinez, a compact man covered in scars from ground combat operations against Nixarian shock troops. The sergeant believed in learning through experience, and his classes typically involved extensive sparring sessions. "Today we're working on close-quarters defense against multiple attackers," Sergeant Martinez announced as the cadets filed into the training gymnasium. "Real combat isn't fair, people. Sometimes you'll be outnumbered. Sometimes your weapons will fail. Sometimes you'll need to rely on nothing but your own 2 hands." He divided the class into groups of 4, with 1 cadet designated as the defender and the other 3 as attackers. The defender's job was to neutralize the threat without being killed by the attackers, who were armed with training weapons that delivered harmless but painful electric shocks. Sarah found herself grouped with Jake Morrison, Zara Okafor, and Tommy Liu, a quiet cadet from the Europa colonies. When their turn came, Tommy volunteered to be the first defender. "Remember," Sergeant Martinez called out, "attackers move in sequence, not all at once. This is about technique, not overwhelming force." Jake moved in first, wielding a training knife. Tommy attempted to block, but Jake's superior reach and strength quickly overwhelmed him. The training weapon touched Tommy's ribs, and he yelped as the electric shock hit him. "Dead," Sergeant Martinez announced. "Morrison, good aggression. Liu, you're thinking too much. Trust your instincts." Next, Jake took the defender position. He was much more successful, using his pilot's reflexes to avoid Zara's attacks and counter with precise strikes. He managed to neutralize 2 attackers before Tommy caught him with a training baton to the shoulder. "Better," the sergeant noted. "Morrison, good use of mobility. But you left your back exposed to the 3rd attacker. When Zara's turn came, she performed adequately but clearly struggled with the physical demands of close combat. Her engineering background had given her an analytical mind, but she lacked the muscle memory and aggressive instincts needed for hand-to-hand fighting. Finally, it was Sarah's turn to defend. She stood in the center of the practice area, trying to look nervous and uncertain. Jake approached first, moving with the confidence of someone who outweighed his opponent by 30 kilograms. He came in fast, training knife aimed at Sarah's midsection. What happened next took less than 3 seconds, but Sergeant Martinez would replay it in his mind for years afterward. As Jake committed to his attack, Sarah seemed to simply disappear. One moment she was directly in front of him. The next she was behind, and to his left, her hand touching the pressure point at the base of his neck. Jake collapsed instantly, his nervous system temporarily scrambled by the precisely applied pressure. "Zara!" seeing her teammate fall, rushed forward with her training baton. Sarah pivoted smoothly, catching Zara's wrist and applying just enough torque to make her drop the weapon. A gentle push sent Zara stumbling backward, off balance but unhurt. Tommy, the smartest of the three attackers, tried to circle around while Sarah was dealing with Zara. But Sarah had already tracked his movement through her peripheral vision. Without even looking in his direction, she threw Zara's dropped baton with perfect accuracy, striking Tommy in the center of his chest with just enough force to activate the training sensor. The entire engagement had lasted 4 seconds. 3 attackers, all neutralized without Sarah breaking a sweat or showing any signs of exertion. The gymnasium had gone completely silent. "Holy shit," someone whispered. Sergeant Martinez approached slowly, his scarred face showing a mixture of amazement and suspicion. "Cadet Chen, where exactly did you learn to fight like that?" Sarah's mind raced. She had made a catastrophic error, allowing her real abilities to show. Years of careful training to remain unnoticed, destroyed in 4 seconds of instinctive combat response. My parents thought I should learn some self-defense," she said weakly. "Living on the frontier colonies can be dangerous." "Self-defense," Sergeant Martinez repeated slowly. He knelt beside Jake, who was beginning to regain consciousness. "Cadet Morrison, how do you feel?" "Like someone hit me with a neural disruptor," Jake groaned. "What the hell happened?" "Cadet Chen applied pressure to your vagus nerve cluster, causing temporary unconsciousness," the sergeant explained. "It's an advanced technique typically taught to special operations personnel." Sarah's stomach dropped. She had used a technique from her parents' training without thinking, a move that no civilian should know. "Morrison's fine," Sergeant Martinez continued, helping Jake to his feet. "But that level of precision requires extensive training. Years of it." He turned to face Sarah directly. "I think you and I need to have a conversation after class, Cadet Chen." As the training session continued, Sarah tried to focus on the remaining exercises, but she could feel the weight of suspicious stares from her classmates. Marcus Reed was watching her with undisguised fascination. Even quiet students like Tommy Lou kept glancing in her direction. She had blown her cover. After 3 years of careful invisibility, one moment of instinctive reaction had exposed her. When class ended, Sarah approached Sergeant Martinez's office with growing dread. Her parents had always stressed that if her identity was compromised, she should contact them immediately using the encrypted communication protocol they had established. But that would mean abandoning her mission to complete military academy training. "Sit down, Chen," the sergeant said, closing his office door behind her. Sarah took the offered chair, trying to project an attitude of nervous confusion rather than the professional calm she actually felt. "I've been training combat personnel for 15 years, Sergeant Martinez began. "I've worked with Marines, Special Forces, even some deep reconnaissance specialists whose files I wasn't cleared to read. And I have never seen a technique executed with that level of precision by someone with no formal training." He leaned back in his chair, studying her face. "So, I'm going to ask you again. Where did you learn to fight like that?" Sarah had prepared for this moment, though she had hoped never to use her contingency story. "My parents were concerned about my safety when I applied to the academy. They arranged for some private instruction." "Private instruction from whom?" "A retired military contractor on Mars. I don't remember his name." Sergeant Martinez nodded slowly. "And this contractor taught you advanced pressure point techniques used by special forces?" "He said I needed to be able to defend myself against larger opponents." "Interesting." The sergeant pulled up Sarah's file on his terminal. "According to your records, you scored in the 50th percentile on combat assessments during admission testing." "I was nervous during the tests, apparently." He scrolled through more data. "Your academic performance has been consistently average. No standout achievements, no disciplinary issues. The kind of record that doesn't attract attention." Sarah said nothing, letting him draw his own conclusions. "Here's what puzzles me, Chen. You clearly have advanced combat training. Your tactical analysis this morning showed sophisticated understanding of xenomilitary doctrine, but you've spent 3 years flying under the radar, never demonstrating these abilities." He leaned forward. "Someone with your skills doesn't hide unless they have a reason to hide." "So what's your reason?" Sarah's training kicked in again. When caught in a lie, the best strategy was often to admit to a smaller truth that concealed the larger deception. "My parents were worried about my safety," she said quietly. "They thought that if I stood out too much, I might attract the wrong kind of attention. There are people who target the families of military personnel. It was partially true. Special operations families did face security risks, which was why her parents' real identities were so carefully protected. Sergeant Martinez considered this explanation. So they had you trained for self-defense but told you to hide your abilities? Yes, sir. And you've been maintaining this charade for 3 years? I wanted to fit in. I didn't want my classmates to think I was showing off. The sergeant was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he made a decision. Chen, graduation is in 4 weeks. Your current academic standing will qualify you for a standard fleet assignment, probably aboard a cruiser or battleship in the outer colonies. Nice, safe, boring duty. Sarah nodded. But based on what I've seen today, you're wasting your potential. I'm going to recommend you for advanced tactical training, maybe special operations orientation. Sarah's blood turned cold. Special operations orientation would mean background checks, security clearances, and intensive screening that would inevitably expose her real identity. Sir, I appreciate the offer, but I'm happy with a regular fleet assignment. I'm sure you are. But the military doesn't always give us what makes us happy, Chen. We go where we're needed. He typed something into his terminal. I'm forwarding my assessment to Colonel Harrison and Commander Pike. They'll want to review your case. As Sarah left the sergeant's office, she realized that her carefully maintained cover was about to completely collapse. Within days, senior academy officials would be asking questions she couldn't answer. Her parents would be contacted for verification of her background. Security investigators would start looking into her family history. The invisible student was about to become the center of unwanted attention. And somewhere in the back of her mind, Sarah wondered if this was all happening for a reason. Her parents had always told her that the universe had a way of putting people where they needed to be, when they needed to be there. Perhaps it was time to stop hiding. The message arrived at 0347 hours, transmitted through channels so secure that only 12 people in human space had access to them. Commander Diana Ross was reviewing xenolinguistic patterns in her home office on Titan Station when the priority alert flashed across her encrypted terminal. Wake up, she called to her husband, who was asleep in their bedroom. We have a problem. Lieutenant Commander Chen Wei emerged 30 seconds later, fully alert despite having been unconscious moments before. 25 years of special operations had trained him to transition from sleep to combat readiness in an instant. What's the situation? He asked, pulling up the message on his own terminal. Our daughter's cover is blown, Diana said grimly. Academy instructors are requesting background verification and recommending her for special operations orientation. Wei read the details quickly. His expression darkened as he processed the information. Sergeant Martinez observed advanced combat techniques. Colonel Harrison noted sophisticated tactical analysis. They're asking questions we can't answer. We always knew this was a possibility, Diana said. Sarah's too skilled to hide forever. The plan was for her to maintain her cover through graduation, then transition to special operations through normal channels. This is happening 3 years too early. Diana pulled up their contingency protocols. We have several options. Extract her immediately and relocate her to a deep cover assignment. Activate her real credentials and bring her into active special operations. Or let events play out and see where they lead, Wei finished. What does your operational instinct tell you? That this isn't random, the timing is too convenient. Diana highlighted several items in the intelligence briefings she had been reviewing. Zephyrian activity has increased 23% in the past month. Corathian raiders have struck 4 human colonies in the Outer Rim, and Nexarian reconnaissance ships have been detected in 3 systems they've never shown interest in before. Wei studied the pattern. You think something big is coming. I think all 3 species are preparing for coordinated action, which means humanity needs every advantage we can get, including our daughter, especially our daughter. Diana activated an encrypted communication channel. Sarah needs to know what's happening, and she needs to make her own choice about how to proceed. 3,000 kilometers away, on the surface of Europa, Sarah received the coded message during her morning exercise routine. She was alone in the Academy's running track, completing her daily 10-kilometer run while most other cadets were still asleep. The message appeared as a routine communication from her supposed parents on Mars. But hidden within the innocent family conversation was a military-grade encryption key. Sarah decoded the message as she ran, her enhanced memory processing the complex cipher without breaking stride. When she understood the content, she nearly stumbled in surprise. Her parents had explained the situation. Academy officials were investigating her background. Security protocols had been activated, and hidden within their coded message was something Sarah had never expected to see: authorization to reveal her true identity if she deemed it operationally necessary. For 3 years, she had lived as the invisible student. Now her parents were giving her permission to become herself. The question was whether humanity needed Sarah Chen, unremarkable cadet, or something much more dangerous. She completed her run and returned to the dormitory, where she found Zara already awake and preparing for the day. "You're up early," Zara noted, toweling off after her shower. "Couldn't sleep," Sarah replied, which was now technically true. "I'm not surprised. Everyone's talking about what happened in combat training yesterday. Marcus has been asking questions about you all evening." Sarah's attention sharpened. "What kind of questions? Where you're really from? What your parents actually do? Whether you've been lying about your background?" Zara paused in her preparations. "He thinks you're some kind of plant. Maybe intelligence services. Maybe even alien infiltration. That's ridiculous. Is it?" Zara turned to face her directly. "Sarah, I've been your roommate for 3 years. You're the quietest person I've ever met. You never talk about your family. And you study combat manuals when you think I'm asleep. Yesterday you took down 3 attackers like you were swatting flies." Sarah realized that her careful invisibility had been an illusion. People had noticed her. They had simply been polite enough not to ask questions. "So who are you really?" Zara asked. Before Sarah could answer, the dormitory's communication system activated. "Cadet Chen, report to Commander Pike's office immediately." Zara raised her eyebrows. This should be interesting. Commander Elizabeth Pike was the Academy's Director of Student Affairs, a stern woman in her 50s who had served with distinction during the Korathian War. Her office was located in the administrative building, and as Sarah walked across the Academy grounds, she noticed other cadets watching her with undisguised curiosity. Word had obviously spread about yesterday's combat demonstration. Commander Pike's secretary, a efficient-looking corporal, gestured Sarah toward the inner office. "The commander will see you now, cadet." Commander Pike's. Sarah entered to find not just Commander Pike, but also Colonel Harrison and Sergeant Martinez. A formal review board for what should have been a routine background verification. "Sit down, Cadet Chen," Commander Pike said. "We need to discuss your future." Sarah took the offered chair, maintaining her cover persona while mentally preparing for multiple contingencies. "Your instructors have brought some interesting observations to my attention," the commander continued. "It seems you've been hiding significant abilities during your time at the Academy. I've always tried to do my best, Commander." "Your best?" Colonel Harrison leaned forward. "Yesterday, you demonstrated tactical analysis that would be impressive, coming from a graduate-level strategist. And according to Sergeant Martinez, your combat skills are far beyond anything we teach here. I've been studying independently. We contacted your parents on Mars," Commander Pike said, watching Sarah's face carefully. "Interesting conversation. They confirmed that you received some private training, but they seemed evasive about the details." Sarah's heart rate remained steady, but her mind was racing. Her parents' cover identities would hold up under casual inquiry, but intensive investigation would eventually expose inconsistencies. "Cadet," Sergeant Martinez said, "I've been thinking about your techniques. The pressure point strike you used on Morrison, the precision of your movement, the tactical awareness you demonstrated. Those aren't self-defense moves. They're assassination techniques." The room became very quiet. "I think," Commander Pike said slowly, "that we need to have a very honest conversation about who you really are." Sarah looked at each of the 3 officers in turn. She could continue the deception, deflect their questions, and hope to maintain her cover until graduation, but her parents had given her authorization to reveal her identity if necessary. And looking at the suspicion in their eyes, she realized that her choice might determine not just her own future, but the effectiveness of her eventual contribution to humanity's defense. "Permission to speak freely, Commander?" Sarah asked. "Granted." Sarah took a deep breath. "My name is Sarah Chen. My parents are Lieutenant Commander Chen Wei and Commander Diana Ross of Special Operations Command. For the past 3 years, I've been operating under deep cover, while completing my academy training. The silence that followed was profound. Finally, Commander Pike spoke. Special Operations Command? I've never heard of officers by those names. You wouldn't have, Commander. Their identities are classified at the highest levels. Colonel Harrison was accessing her terminal, running searches through military databases. I'm not finding any records of these individuals, because their real service records are compartmentalized, Sarah explained. They conduct operations that don't officially exist. Prove it, Sergeant Martinez said bluntly. Sarah hesitated for just a moment, then made a decision that would change everything. She reached into her uniform pocket and retrieved what appeared to be a standard Academy identification card. But when she pressed her thumb to a hidden sensor and spoke a 12-digit authentication code, the card's display changed completely. The new identification showed Sarah's real name, her actual service number, and a clearance level that made all three officers lean forward in surprise. Special Operations Command, Deep Cover Operations Division, Commander Pike read slowly. Clearance level. This says you have authorization to access classified materials that I don't even know exist. Yes, Commander. You're 18 years old. I've been training for this since I was 5. Colonel Harrison was still staring at the identification. According to this, you have field experience on reconnaissance missions behind enemy lines, against all 3 hostile species. Observation only, Sarah said. My parents believed I needed to understand our enemies before I could effectively fight them. Sergeant Martinez shook his head in amazement. No wonder you moved like that in combat training. You've actually seen action. I've seen what our enemies are capable of, Sarah confirmed. And I've learned how they think, how they fight, how they can be defeated. Commander Pike was processing the implications. Why the deception? Why spend 3 years pretending to be an average student? Because my parents wanted me to understand conventional military operations before transitioning to special forces. They wanted me to know the people I would someday be protecting. And now? Sarah looked directly at the commander. Now I think events are moving faster than anyone anticipated. My parents' intelligence suggests that all 3 hostile species are preparing for coordinated action against humanity. The 3 officers exchanged glances. Commander Pike activated a privacy shield around her office, ensuring that their conversation could not be monitored. What kind of coordinated action? She asked. The kind that could threaten human civilization, Sarah replied grimly. And the kind that might require unconventional responses. Over the next 2 hours, Sarah provided her instructors with a strategic briefing that fundamentally changed their understanding of humanity's situation. She explained Zephyrian fleet movements that weren't being reported in standard intelligence channels. She described Corathian technological developments that Earth's military analysts had missed. She detailed Nexarian infiltration techniques that posed threats no one had previously considered. Most importantly, she outlined a pattern of coordinated planning that suggested the 3 species were preparing to act together for the first time in human history. If this assessment is accurate, Colonel Harrison said, we could be looking at an existential threat to human space. It is accurate, Sarah confirmed. And it's why my parents believe my training period may need to be accelerated. Commander Pike was accessing classified databases, cross-referencing Sarah's intelligence with official reports. Some of this information is appearing in recent briefings, but the pattern analysis. She paused. This level of strategic assessment requires access to data from multiple sources across human space. Special Operations Command maintains assets you don't know about, Sarah said. My parents have access to intelligence networks that span the galaxy. And you want to join these operations? Sarah considered the question carefully. Commander, 3 years ago, my parents sent me here to learn how normal military units function. But the situation has changed. If humanity faces the kind of coordinated threat I've described, we'll need every advantage we can get, including soldiers who can move like ghosts and think like generals. Sergeant Martinez murmured, including soldiers who understand our enemies well enough to anticipate their actions, Sarah corrected. Commander Pike made her decision. Cadet Chen, I'm going to contact Special Operations Command directly and verify your story. If it checks out, we'll discuss modifying your graduation timeline. Commander, there's something else you should know, Sarah said. The enemy coordination I've described? My analysis suggests they're targeting this academy. The room went cold. What do you mean? Colonel Harrison demanded. New Geneva Military Academy trains the next generation of Earth's military leadership. If our enemies wanted to cripple humanity's future defense capabilities, this would be a logical target. You think they're planning an attack? I think they're planning something that will test every defense Earth has prepared, and I think the students and faculty here will be caught in the middle of it. Sarah stood up slowly. Which means the invisible student may need to become something else entirely. As she left Commander Pike's office, Sarah felt the weight of 3 years of deception lifting from her shoulders, but replacing it was something much heavier. The responsibility of using her real abilities to protect the people who had unknowingly become her friends. Behind her, 3 senior military officers were beginning to understand that their quiet, unremarkable cadet might be the most dangerous weapon in their arsenal, and in the outer reaches of human space, alien fleets were moving toward objectives that would soon bring war to the heart of Earth's defense establishment. The invisible student was about to become very visible indeed. The encrypted transmission reached Earth Defense Command at 1,432 hours, carried by a battered reconnaissance drone that had somehow survived a journey through 3 hostile star systems. Admiral Sarah Martinez, commanding officer of the 3rd Defense Fleet, received the priority alert while reviewing deployment schedules for the Outer Rim patrol squadrons. What she read in the decoded message made her blood run cold. "Admiral, we have a problem," she announced to her senior staff, gathered in the secure briefing room of Earth Defense Station Alpha. Long-range reconnaissance has confirmed massive fleet movements by all 3 hostile species. The holographic display showed the known galaxy, with human colonies marked in blue, allied neutral systems in green, and hostile territories in red. Over the past 72 hours, those red zones had begun to pulse with activity. Zephyrian battle fleets are massing in the Kepler system, Admiral Martinez continued. Corathian raiders have abandoned their usual scattered formation and are concentrating in the Wolf sector, and Nixarian dreadnoughts are moving into positions we've never seen before. Captain Torres, her intelligence officer, studied the patterns with growing alarm. "Admiral, if these projections are accurate, we're looking at the largest coordinated military action in galactic history." "More than that," Admiral Martinez said grimly. "We're looking at a converging attack pattern. All 3 fleets are moving toward the same general region of space." She highlighted a cluster of systems at the heart of human-controlled territory. "The Sol system. They're coming for Earth." The briefing room erupted in concerned voices as the implications sank in. Earth was not just humanity's homeworld. It was the center of their military command structure, their industrial base, and their primary population center. An attack on Sol would threaten the very survival of human civilization. "What's the timeline?" Captain Chen, the fleet's tactical officer, asked. "Based on observed fleet speeds and distances, we estimate 12 to 15 days before they reach the outer defensive perimeter." Our response? Admiral Martinez brought up deployment options. "Every available warship is being recalled to Sol system. We're activating all reserve squadrons and calling up the colonial defense fleets. Will it be enough?" The Admiral's expression was grim. "Against any one of these species, yes. Against all 3 working together, we're about to find out." Meanwhile, on Europa, the atmosphere at New Geneva Military Academy had become increasingly tense. Word of increased military activity had filtered down through official channels, but the full scope of the threat remained classified. Students and faculty knew something significant was happening, but not how significant. Sarah spent the morning in an encrypted communication session with her parents, using a secure channel that Commander Pike had authorized. The conversation was brief but illuminating. "The enemy coordination is more advanced than we initially assessed," her father reported. "All 3 species have been planning this for months, possibly years." "What's their objective?" Sarah asked. "Complete elimination of human spacefaring capability," her mother replied. "They're not just planning a raid or territorial acquisition. They want to end humanity's expansion into the galaxy permanently. And Earth is the primary target. If they can destroy Earth's military infrastructure and population centers, human civilization will collapse." Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with Europa's surface temperature. "What are my orders?" "Continue your cover for now," her father said. "But be prepared. If our intelligence is correct, the Academy may become a target within days." "A target how?" The Academy trains humanity's future military leaders, her mother explained. Eliminating an entire generation of potential officers would cripple Earth's long-term defense capabilities. They're planning a direct attack on the Academy. We're not certain. But if I were planning an assault on human civilization, New Geneva would be high on my target list. After the communication ended, Sarah found herself in an impossible position. She knew her classmates and instructors were in mortal danger, but revealing that knowledge would require exposing intelligence sources that could compromise ongoing operations. She decided to take a calculated risk. During lunch, Sarah approached Marcus Reed's usual table where the popular cadets gathered to discuss the day's rumors and speculation. "Mind if I join you?" she asked quietly. Marcus looked up in surprise. In 3 years, Sarah had never voluntarily approached their group. "Sure, Chen, though I have to admit, you're not exactly our usual lunch companion." Sarah sat down across from Marcus, aware that the conversation at nearby tables was diminishing as other cadets strained to listen. "I've been thinking about the increased military activity we've been hearing about," she said. Jake Morrison laughed. "Thinking? You've been practically obsessed with it. Every time anyone mentions fleet movements or defensive preparations, you get this intense look. Because the pattern worries me," Sarah replied. "What pattern?" Zara asked, genuinely curious. Sarah had prepared for this moment. She needed to guide her classmates toward understanding the threat without revealing her classified knowledge. "Look at the timing," she said. "Zephyrian raids have increased in frequency over the past month. Corathian attacks have become more coordinated, and Nexarian reconnaissance activity has expanded into systems they've never shown interest in before." Marcus nodded slowly. "Okay, that's true. But these species have been hostile to humanity for decades. Increased activity doesn't necessarily mean anything special, doesn't it?" Sarah pulled out her personal tablet and displayed a star map. "What if I told you that the recent attacks follow a specific geographic pattern?" She highlighted the affected systems, showing how they formed a rough perimeter around human core territories. "They're probing our defenses," Tommy Liu observed, "testing response times and fleet positions." "Exactly. And what does that suggest about their intentions?" The table fell silent as the implications became clear. "They're planning something big," Zara whispered. "Something that requires detailed intelligence about our military capabilities." "But that's impossible," Marcus protested. "The 3 species have never cooperated before. They're as hostile to each other as they are to us." "Are they?" Sarah asked. "Or have we just assumed that because they've never attacked us simultaneously?" She brought up historical battle records. "Look at the timing of major engagements over the past 5 years. Zephyrian raids typically occur in the first quarter of each galactic standard year. Corathian attacks peak during the second quarter. Nexarian incursions happen during the third quarter. So they're staggered," Jake said. "What's significant about that? It's too regular to be coincidental. It's almost like they're deliberately avoiding conflict with each other while maintaining pressure on us." Marcus was beginning to understand. "You think they've been coordinating all along. I think they've been planning," Sarah said carefully. "And I think whatever they're planning is about to happen." The conversation was interrupted by the Academy's general announcement system. "All cadets report to the main auditorium immediately. Emergency assembly." As hundreds of students filed into the auditorium, the tension in the air was palpable. Commander Pike took the stage, flanked by the Academy's senior instructors. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "I'm going to be direct with you. Earth Defense Command has detected large-scale military movements by hostile alien forces. All 3 species appear to be concentrating their fleets for coordinated action." The auditorium erupted in concerned murmurs. As a precautionary measure, the Academy is being placed on high alert. All leave is cancelled, and security protocols are being upgraded. Advanced combat training will be intensified, and graduation schedules may be accelerated depending on how events develop. Marcus leaned over to whisper to Sarah. "How did you know?" Sarah's response was interrupted by Commander Pike's next announcement. "Additionally, all final-year cadets will participate in a special tactical exercise beginning tomorrow morning. This exercise will simulate defense of a high-value installation against coordinated alien attack." She paused, looking directly at Sarah. "The scenario will assume that our normal defensive protocols have failed, and that unconventional tactics may be necessary for survival. After the assembly, Sarah found herself surrounded by classmates asking questions she couldn't fully answer. "Chen, you obviously know something," Marcus said. "Your analysis at lunch was too accurate to be guesswork." "I read the intelligence reports carefully," Sarah replied. "Bullshit," Jake said bluntly. "Nobody predicts coordinated alien action based on publicly available information. You have access to classified intelligence." Sarah realized that her attempts to prepare her classmates had backfired. Now they were asking exactly the questions she couldn't answer. "Look," she said finally. "All I know is that the situation is more serious than anyone wants to admit publicly. We need to be prepared for anything." "Prepared how?" Sarah asked. Sarah looked around at the faces of her classmates. These people she had spent 3 years learning to care about. Young men and women who would soon graduate to serve on the front lines of humanity's defense. People who deserved to know what they might be facing. By understanding that this tactical exercise tomorrow might not be an exercise, she said quietly. The group fell silent. "You think they're coming here?" Tommy asked. "To the academy?" "I think," Sarah said carefully, "that anyone planning an assault on human civilization would want to eliminate our future military leadership, and we represent the largest concentration of officer candidates in human space." That evening, Sarah received another encrypted message from her parents. The content was brief but urgent. "Enemy fleets have accelerated their approach. Timeline revised to 72 hours. Academy is confirmed target. Recommend immediate activation of contingency protocols." Sarah stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it from her communication system. Tomorrow's tactical exercise was going to become very real, very quickly. She spent the night reviewing Academy defensive plans, studying the profiles of her classmates, and preparing equipment that she hoped she wouldn't need. But deep in her heart, she knew that the 3 years of playing the invisible student were about to end in the most dramatic way possible. The enemy was coming to New Geneva Military Academy. And when they arrived, they would discover that their intelligence about Earth's defensive capabilities was fatally incomplete. They would learn that sometimes the most dangerous weapons came in the most unassuming packages. And they would realize, far too late, that dismissing the quiet girl in the back of the class had been their most critical mistake. As Europa's twin moons rose over the academy grounds, Sarah Chen finished her preparations and tried to get some sleep. Tomorrow, the invisible student would disappear forever. Tomorrow, humanity's enemies would meet something much more dangerous. The attack began at 0347 hours, Europa local time, just as the Academy's early rising cadets were beginning their morning routines. The first indication of trouble came from the orbital defense satellites, their automated systems detecting massive energy signatures emerging from hyperspace at the edge of the system. Sarah was awake instantly, not from the alarms that would begin wailing in 30 seconds, but from the subtle vibration in her dormitory's walls as the Academy's defensive shields activated. Her enhanced hearing caught the high-pitched whine of charging weapons systems and the deeper rumble of the underground reactor, increasing power output. "What's happening?" Zara mumbled from the upper bunk, stirring as the emergency lighting activated. "We're under attack," Sarah said simply, rolling out of her bed and moving to her personal locker with practiced efficiency. "What? That's impossible. The tactical exercise isn't supposed to start until—" The Academy's general alarm cut off Zara's protest, its strident tone echoing through every building on the campus. Commander Pike's voice followed immediately over the communication system. "This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. All cadets report to designated defensive positions immediately. We are under attack by hostile alien forces." Zara sat up abruptly, suddenly fully awake. "You're serious? This is actually happening." Sarah was pulling on her tactical gear, equipment that looked standard but had been extensively modified by her parents. Enhanced body armor, advanced communication systems, and weapons that appeared regulation, but were anything but. "Sarah, how did you know?" "You were getting dressed before the alarms even started." "Training," Sarah replied, which was true enough. She activated her personal communication system and immediately received a priority message from her parents. Tripartite Assault Force, Zephyrian Fast Attack Squadrons, Corathian Heavy Raiders, Nixarian Infiltration Units, Academy Primary Target, Defensive Perimeter breached in 17 minutes. "Good hunting, daughter." Sarah closed her eyes briefly, feeling the weight of 3 years of deception finally lifting from her shoulders. When she opened them, Zara was staring at her with a mixture of fear and confusion. Sarah, you're not reacting like someone who's surprised by this. Because I'm not, Sarah said quietly. Get dressed, Zara. Regulation combat gear, maximum armor rating, move fast. But you said this was impossible yesterday. No, I said, the pattern worried me. There's a difference. Sarah was checking her weapons, movements fluid and professional. Zara, I need you to listen carefully. In approximately 15 minutes, this academy is going to become a battlefield. You can either trust me and follow my instructions, or you can follow standard evacuation protocols and probably die. Zara stared at her roommate as if seeing her for the first time. Who are you? Someone who's been trained for this exact situation, Sarah replied. Now get dressed. We're out of time. Across the campus, similar scenes were playing out as cadets responded to the emergency. Most followed their training, rushing to designated rally points where instructors would organize them into defensive units. But a few, the ones who had been paying attention to Sarah's warnings, were preparing for something much more serious than a training exercise. Marcus Reed was struggling into his combat gear when Jake Morrison burst into his dormitory room. Marcus, Chen was right. This isn't an exercise. The orbital platforms are reporting actual alien warships. How many? More than anyone's ever seen before. And they're coming from 3 different directions. Marcus's mind raced. 3 directions? Zephyrian, Corathian, and Nexarian? All of them, just like Chen predicted. Where is Chen? Nobody knows. She disappeared from the rally points. Sergeant Martinez is looking for her. Marcus finished adjusting his armor. Jake, yesterday Chen warned us about coordinated alien action. This morning she seemed to know the attack was coming before the alarm sounded. Either she's the luckiest guesser in human space, or she knows something we don't, Jake finished. In the Academy's command center, Commander Pike was coordinating the defense with grim efficiency. The tactical displays showed the approaching enemy forces in stark detail. 47 Zephyrian fast attack ships, 23 Corathian heavy raiders, and 12 Nexarian stealth vessels. What's the status of our defensive systems? She asked her tactical officer. Orbital platforms are engaging the Zephyrian squadron now. Shield generators at maximum power. Ground-based weapons charging. But Commander. The officer hesitated. Speak freely. We're designed to repel raids, not full-scale invasion. If they coordinate their attack properly, our defenses won't hold for more than an hour. Commander Pike nodded grimly. The Academy had always been considered a low-priority target, protected more by its remote location than by heavy fortifications. The enemy had clearly calculated that Earth's forces would be concentrated around more obvious targets. Sir, I have Cadet Chen on a secure channel, the communications officer reported. She's requesting permission to implement what she calls unconventional defensive protocols. Where is she? Unknown. The signal is heavily encrypted and bounced through multiple relay points. Commander Pike hesitated for just a moment. 3 days ago, she had learned that her unremarkable student was actually a deep-cover special operations asset. Now that student was offering to take independent action during a crisis. Put her through. Sarah's voice came through crystal clear despite the encryption. Commander, I need authorization to engage enemy forces using methods not covered in standard academy protocols. What kind of methods? The kind my parents taught me, the kind designed specifically for this situation. Commander Pike looked at the tactical display showing overwhelming enemy forces approaching her academy. Authorization granted, Cadet. Do whatever is necessary. Understood. Chen out. The first wave of the attack hit the Academy's outer defenses 12 minutes later. Zephyrian fighters swept in at incredible speed, their energy weapons targeting the orbital defense platforms with surgical precision. The platforms returned fire, their heavy particle beams scoring hits on several attackers. But the alien's superior maneuverability allowed most to evade the defensive fire. On the Academy grounds, cadets watched in awe and terror as battles raged in the space above their heads. Brilliant flashes of weapons fire lit up Europa's sky, and the occasional debris trail marked where a ship had been destroyed. Stay in formation, Sergeant Martinez shouted to his group of first-year cadets, who were manning defensive positions around the Academy's main buildings. Remember your training. Wait for targets to enter effective range. But as the first Corathian raiders descended through the atmosphere, their massive forms bristling with weapons. It became clear that training might not be enough. The Korathian ships opened fire while still kilometers above the surface, their heavy plasma cannons targeting the Academy's shield generators. The defensive barriers flickered and sparked as they absorbed the punishment, but held. Shields at 70% and falling, reported the tactical center. Then the Nexarian infiltrators struck. Unlike their allies, the Nexarians didn't announce their presence with massive energy discharges. Their stealth technology allowed them to approach undetected, materializing inside the Academy's defensive perimeter like ghosts. The first indication of their presence came when Cadet Morrison's defensive position simply vanished in a blast of coherent energy. One moment Jake was manning a plasma rifle emplacement. The next moment there was nothing but a smoking crater where he had been standing. Nexarian ground forces inside the perimeter. Someone screamed over the communication system. They're everywhere. Panic began to set in among the defending cadets as invisible enemies struck from unpredictable directions. Standard defensive formations were useless against opponents who could appear anywhere without warning. That was when Sarah Chen decided it was time to stop being invisible herself. She emerged from the shadows between two dormitory buildings, moving with fluid grace toward the first Nexarian infiltrator she had located. The alien soldier was advancing on a group of terrified second-year cadets, its adaptive camouflage making it nearly invisible in the dim emergency lighting. Sarah's first shot took the Nexarian in the center of its sensory cluster, her weapon's enhanced targeting system cutting through the alien's stealth field like it didn't exist. The creature collapsed without making a sound. Nexarian eliminated. Grid reference 7 Alpha, she reported over the tactical network. Moving to next contact. The second infiltrator was attempting to sabotage the Academy's main power grid. Sarah's approach was absolutely silent, her enhanced training allowing her to move without disturbing so much as a piece of loose gravel. The alien never knew she was there until her combat knife found the weak point between its armor plates. Second Nexarian down, power grid secured. In the command center, Commander Pike was tracking Sarah's progress with amazement. How is she finding them? Our sensors can't penetrate their stealth fields. Unknown, sir. But she's eliminated 4 Nexarian infiltrators in the past 6 minutes. Meanwhile, the aerial battle was intensifying. Korathian raiders had broken through the orbital defenses and were conducting ground attack runs, their plasma weapons carving gouges in the Academy's buildings despite the defensive shields. Marcus Reed found himself leading a group of final-year cadets in a desperate attempt to reach the heavy weapons emplacement on the Academy's north ridge. If they could bring the installation's particle cannons online, they might be able to drive off the Korathian attackers. Stay low and move fast, Marcus shouted as another plasma blast scorched the ground nearby. Chen was right about everything else. If she said we needed to be prepared for anything, then anything includes making it to that weapons platform. The group sprinted across open ground while Korathian fighters strafed their position. 2 cadets were caught by near misses, their armor overloading from plasma splash damage. But the rest made it to the relative safety of the weapons installation. How do we activate this thing? Tommy Lou asked, staring at the complex control interface. Marcus began running through the activation sequence he had memorized during countless training sessions. Just like the simulators, but with live ammunition. The massive particle cannon came online with a low hum of power. Marcus swiveled the targeting system toward the nearest Korathian raider, a massive vessel that was lining up for another attack run. Target locked, he announced, pressing the firing stud. The particle beam lanced upward, striking the Korathian ship amidships. The alien vessel's armor glowed white-hot under the impact, and its attack run faltered as it tried to evade further fire. "We hit them," Tommy shouted in excitement. "Keep firing," Marcus ordered. "Make them pay for every meter." But even as the cadets scored hits on the attacking raiders, more enemy ships were appearing. The Zephyrian fighters had regrouped and were descending toward the Academy grounds, their speed and agility allowing them to avoid most of the defensive fire. In the thick of the ground battle, Sarah was engaged in a deadly game of cat and mouse with the remaining Nexarian infiltrators. Her enhanced training gave her advantages no normal human possessed. She could see through their stealth fields, predict their movement patterns, and strike with lethal precision. But there were still too many of them. "Commander Pike," she reported over the tactical network. "I count at least 8 more Nexarian infiltrators. plus conventional Korathian ground forces landing near the South Complex. Request immediate evacuation of non-combat personnel. Negative, Chen. All evacuation routes are under fire. We're trapped here until reinforcements arrive. When will that be? Unknown. Earth Defense Force is engaging the main alien fleets throughout the system. We're on our own. Sarah considered this information while taking cover behind a damaged hover vehicle. The Academy's defensive situation was deteriorating rapidly. Standard defensive protocols were proving inadequate against the coordinated alien assault. It was time to implement tactics that no Academy instructor had ever taught. Commander, I'm going to attempt something that's not in any tactical manual. I need all defending units to fall back to the central complex and establish a defensive perimeter there. Chen, that will expose the outer installations to capture. The outer installations are already compromised. If we consolidate our forces, I can implement a defensive strategy that might actually work. Commander Pike looked at her tactical displays, showing alien forces advancing from multiple directions against scattered defensive positions. Standard military doctrine called for maintaining distributed defenses, but standard military doctrine wasn't working. All units, fall back to Central Complex. Repeat, all units, consolidate around main Academy buildings. As human defenders began their fighting withdrawal, Sarah put her parents' most dangerous lessons into practice. She wasn't just going to defend the Academy. She was going to make the aliens regret ever coming here. The invisible student was about to become humanity's most visible weapon. The consolidated defense of New Geneva Military Academy's central complex became a masterpiece of tactical improvisation, orchestrated by an 18-year-old girl who had spent 3 years pretending to be ordinary. As human defenders fell back to the main buildings, Sarah Chen began implementing strategies that turned the Academy's architecture into a death trap for alien invaders. Marcus, take your heavy weapons team to the 3rd floor of the administration building. Sarah's voice crackled over the tactical network. Tommy, position your squad in the library's east wing. Jake, if you're still alive, get to the roof of the cadet dormitory with every portable missile launcher you can carry. Chen, where are you? Marcus demanded as his team sprinted through corridors lit only by emergency lighting. And how do you know our positions better than we do? Because I've been studying this Academy's defensive potential for 3 years, Sarah replied, and I'm exactly where I need to be. She was, in fact, moving through the Academy's maintenance tunnels, a network of passages that most cadets didn't even know existed. Her parents had taught her to always identify alternative routes and hidden positions in any environment. Now that knowledge was keeping her alive as Nexarian infiltrators swept through the main corridors above. The attacking aliens had expected to face a conventional defensive formation, human soldiers in predictable positions, following standard tactical doctrine. What they found instead was a defense that seemed to anticipate their every move. When Korathian ground forces advanced on the main entrance, they discovered that the approach had been turned into a killing zone. Heavy weapons positioned on upper floors provided overlapping fields of fire, while carefully placed explosive charges destroyed their cover positions exactly when they were most exposed. How did they know we would use that approach route? The Korathian assault commander growled in his native language, watching his advance units get cut down by precisely targeted fire. What he didn't know was that Sarah had studied Korathian tactical doctrine for years, accompanying her parents on reconnaissance missions where she had observed their preferred assault patterns firsthand. Meanwhile, the Zephyrian fighters attempting to provide close air support found themselves facing unexpected resistance. The Academy's defensive weapons, supposedly designed for training purposes, were producing targeting solutions of impossible accuracy. Their weapon systems are acquiring locks faster than our evasive maneuvers, the lead Zephyrian pilot reported. How are they compensating for our speed? The answer was that Sarah had reprogrammed the Academy's targeting computers, uploading tactical algorithms her parents had developed specifically for engaging Zephyrian vessels. The alien's superior speed was useless if the defensive systems could predict exactly where they were going to be. But it was against the Nexarian infiltrators that Sarah's true capabilities became most apparent. The Nexarians prided themselves on their stealth technology and their ability to appear anywhere without warning. Their psychological warfare tactics relied on creating fear and confusion among human defenders who couldn't see them coming. Sarah not only could see them coming, she could anticipate where they would appear next. Nexarian infiltrator materializing in Corridor 7 in 15 seconds, she reported to Jake's squad. Wait for my mark. Then concentrate fire on the junction between the east and south passages. Chen, how can you possibly know that? Jake whispered into his communicator. Because they're following a pattern, Sarah replied. Every species develops preferred tactical approaches. The Nexarians always advance along routes that provide maximum cover and multiple escape options. There are only 3 corridors in that section that meet their criteria. 15 seconds later, a Nexarian infiltrator materialized exactly where Sarah had predicted. Jake's squad was ready for it, their concentrated fire overwhelming the aliens' personal shields and eliminating the threat before it could react. Impossible. The Nexarian commander hissed as he reviewed the tactical data. The humans are anticipating our stealth insertions. How are they detecting our approach patterns? His question was answered 3 minutes later when Sarah appeared behind him in the Academy's central courtyard, moving with absolute silence despite the ongoing battle around them. The Nexarian commander was one of their most experienced infiltration specialists, enhanced with cybernetic implants that should have made him nearly invulnerable to human attack. His personal shields could deflect standard weapons fire, his reflexes were faster than any unenhanced human, and his stealth field made him effectively invisible, none of which mattered when Sarah's combat knife found the precise point where his armor plating met his cybernetic interface, delivering a strike that severed his primary neural connections in a single motion. Nexarian command element eliminated, she reported calmly. Their coordination is about to collapse. And collapse it did. Without their commander's tactical guidance, the infiltrators began making mistakes, appearing in predictable patterns that allowed the defending cadets to target them effectively. But even as the immediate threats were neutralized, the larger battle was far from over. The combined alien fleet still held overwhelming numerical superiority, and reinforcement waves were already approaching the Academy. That was when Sarah decided to implement the most dangerous part of her parents' training. Commander Pike, she said over the tactical network, I need access to the Academy's primary communication array. Chen, the communications building is surrounded by enemy forces. I know. That's where I'm going. That's suicide. No, Sarah said quietly. That's what I was trained for. She emerged from the maintenance tunnels into the Academy's central courtyard, where the sounds of battle echoed off the damaged buildings. Corathian heavy weapons had shattered most of the decorative structures, and scorch marks from Zephyrian strafing runs scarred the ground. Moving across the open space required every technique her parents had taught her about battlefield stealth. Sarah flowed from cover to cover like liquid shadow, her movements so fluid and natural that even the enhanced sensors of patrolling Nexarian infiltrators failed to detect her passage. The communications building was indeed surrounded, with Corathian soldiers establishing defensive positions around its perimeter, while technical specialists worked to access Earth's military communication networks. Sarah studied their deployment pattern for 30 seconds, then began her approach. The first Corathian guard died without knowing he had been attacked. Sarah's combat knife found the gap between his helmet and body armor. The blade severed his spinal cord with surgical precision. She lowered his body to the ground silently and continued moving. The second guard was more alert, his enhanced hearing detecting a sound that shouldn't have been there. But when he turned to investigate, Sarah was already inside his defensive perimeter. Her enhanced reflexes allowed her to strike before he could raise an alarm, another silent elimination that left no trace of her presence. By the time Sarah reached the communications building itself, she had neutralized 6 guards without triggering any alarms or alerts. The Corathian technical team inside the building continued their work, unaware that their perimeter security had been systematically eliminated. Sarah accessed the building through a ventilation shaft, her small size allowing her to navigate passages that would have been impossible for larger infiltrators. She moved through the building's internal structure, like a ghost, observing enemy positions and planning her next moves. The communications array was located on the building's top floor, where 2 Corathian specialists were attempting to crack Earth's military encryption codes. Their work required concentration and sophisticated equipment, making them vulnerable to someone who could approach undetected. Sarah's attack was swift and decisive. Both specialists were unconscious before either could trigger an alarm, their advanced technical equipment undamaged but now under human control. Communications array secured, Sarah reported as she began activating the Academy's most powerful transmission systems, initiating priority contact with Special Operations Command. What followed was a conversation that would change the course of the battle. Nighthawk Control, This is Shadow 7 requesting immediate tactical support. Sarah transmitted using codes that had never appeared in any Academy manual. The response came back almost instantly. Shadow 7. This is Nighthawk Control. Confirm identity with authentication protocol 77 Alpha. Sarah provided a 20-digit authentication code that identified her as a deep cover special operations asset, with authority to request classified support. Authentication confirmed. Shadow 7. What do you need? I have accurate targeting data for 3 alien fleet elements currently engaging New Geneva Military Academy. Request immediate fire support from any available assets. Standby. Shadow 7. The pause lasted 30 seconds, during which Sarah could hear the ongoing battle throughout the Academy campus. Then Nighthawk Control returned with news that made her smile for the first time in hours. Shadow 7. Be advised that Special Operations Command has been monitoring the tactical situation at your location. Fire support assets are already en route. ETA. 4 minutes. What kind of assets? The kind that don't officially exist. Shadow 7. The kind your parents helped develop. 4 minutes later, the alien fleets attacking New Geneva Military Academy discovered that their intelligence about Earth's defensive capabilities had been catastrophically incomplete. The first indication of trouble came when Zephyrian fighters began disappearing without explanation. One moment they would be conducting attack runs. The next moment their communication signals would simply cease. No explosion, no distress calls, nothing. Where are our squadrons? The Zephyrian fleet commander demanded. His question was answered when human ships began materializing throughout the battle space. Vessels so advanced that they seemed to phase in and out of reality itself. These weren't standard Earth Defense Force ships, but something entirely new. Special operations vessels equipped with experimental technology that made them nearly invulnerable to conventional attack. The lead ship was the ESV Phantom, commanded by Captain Diana Ross and Lieutenant Commander Chen Wei. Their vessel's adaptive camouflage made it effectively invisible to alien sensors, while its weapon systems had been designed specifically for engaging all 3 hostile species simultaneously. Sarah, this is your mother. Diana's voice came through the secure communication channel. We're here to extract you. Negative, Mom, Sarah replied, using the informal address for the first time in a tactical situation. The Academy personnel are still in danger. I'm not leaving until everyone is safe. Understood. Then we'll make sure everyone gets home safely. What followed was a demonstration of human military capability that the Alien Alliance had never imagined possible. The special operations vessels moved through the battle space like predators, their advanced technology allowing them to engage multiple enemy ships simultaneously, while remaining effectively invisible to return fire. Zephyrian fighters found their superior speed useless against weapons that could predict their movement patterns with perfect accuracy. Korathian raiders discovered that their heavy armor provided no protection against humanity's newest generation of penetrator weapons. Nexarian stealth ships learned that humans had developed detection systems that made their cloaking technology obsolete. But the most devastating revelation came when Sarah activated the Academy's final defensive system. All Academy personnel, take cover in hardened positions, she announced over the general communication system, implementing Omega-level defensive protocols in 60 seconds. What the attacking aliens didn't know was that New Geneva Military Academy wasn't just a training facility. It was also a testing ground for experimental defensive technologies, systems that had been installed during the Academy's construction and hidden beneath layers of conventional equipment. When Sarah activated those systems, the Academy itself became a weapon. Concealed particle beam arrays emerged from hidden positions throughout the campus, their targeting systems guided by Sarah's intimate knowledge of alien tactical doctrine. The weapons had been designed specifically to engage all 3 hostile species simultaneously, their firing solutions optimized for the exact combat scenarios now playing out above the Academy. The concentrated firepower eliminated the remaining alien ground forces within minutes, while simultaneously providing fire support for the special operations vessels engaging the orbital fleet elements. This is impossible. The Korathian assault commander gasped as his forces were systematically destroyed by weapons that shouldn't have existed. Earth doesn't possess this technology. But Earth did possess that technology, developed in secret by special operations personnel who understood that conventional defenses might not be sufficient against coordinated alien assault. And at the center of it all was an 18-year-old girl who had spent 3 years pretending to be ordinary while preparing for exactly this moment. As the last alien ships retreated from the Academy's defensive perimeter, Sarah finally allowed herself to rest. She had succeeded in protecting her classmates, her instructors, and the Academy itself. But more than that, she had demonstrated that humanity's enemies had fundamentally misunderstood what they were fighting. They had assumed that humans were predictable, that Earth's military followed conventional patterns, that a training academy would be defended by conventional means. They had never considered that the quiet girl in the back of the class might be the